This is Talking Drupal, a weekly chat about web design and development from a group of guys with one thing in common. We love Drupal. We're recording this again on Wednesday afternoon in a Google Hangout. Visit us at talkingdrupal.com. This today is episode 92, and it's another off the cuff. We're going to call this number 4. Welcome, guys.
Good afternoon.
So we have off the cuff again today. So what is off the cuff? We've waited for a long time to just chat about different topics that are random and not Drupal oriented all the time, and we're going to do that today. We haven't done it for like 50 episodes, so it's been quite a while since we've done this. And today joining us again is John Picozzi from Oomph.
Good afternoon, Internet.
How are you today, John?
Oh, I'm fabulous.
That's
It's
great.
it's about 50 degrees outside, sunny, birds are chirping. For some of you, that's every day. Here in New England, not so much.
So I had the pleasure of visiting you in your office space last week.
You did.
Did we talk about that in last week's show? Maybe
It was a
did.
pleasure for both sides.
Okay.
No, I don't believe we did talk about that.
Okay,
I
so
believe we did.
Did we? Okay, all right. So,
I remember talking about it anyway. Maybe it was during the Ned Camp meeting.
all right, so let's just skip it. So let's skip that. Can't remember what we talked about or not. So, but that brings up a topic that I guess we'll hit at the end of the show is the next Providence Drupal camp. A Drupal meetup will be at Oomph, which is next week.
It
So,
will be. Yep.
so looking forward to that. We also have Nick Laughlin from Enlightened Design.
Good afternoon. Winter parking bans ended last night, so hopefully traffic will clear up a little bit around here. Be looking forward to spring.
So,
Can you-
Nick, is
can you
all
tell
the
me what
snow gone in your yard?
No, not in the yard. On the streets and sidewalks, pretty much it's gone.
What's
Yeah.
a winter parking ban, and why has it lasted this long?
So we have a couple of different versions of winter parking bans. One of them is between December 1st and March 31st, you can't park overnight on certain sides of the street. And then you also have active snow bans. So when it's actually snowing, you also can't park in certain areas. So, and the reason is because it's densely populated. There's nowhere to push the snow, so they need to push it on one side of the street. And in order to not bury cars, you're not allowed to park there, and they'll tow you very quickly if you're on the wrong side of the street. So
Wow.
it's over.
So John and I have driveways, so we take care of that.
Yep. We, plenty of parking over here at the Picozzi Mansion.
We still have parking bans, but as long as you're not on the street, you're okay where I am.
Yeah, it's one of the major things I'm looking forward to once we find a house.
Great.
Is having a driveway. So
should we? No, we're not even going to try the lame April Fool's joke, are we?
Nah.
It is April 1st. Did I give the date? Actually,
No, I don't think you did.
No, I didn't give the date in the intro, but it is April 1st. Welcome, everybody.
Surprise!
So we're not going to actually try a lame April Fool's joke from us, but there were a few interesting April Fool's jokes that we saw online today.
Yeah, I think my favorite was actually Google Maps. If you go to Google Maps and type in, say, Boston, Massachusetts, the city of Boston comes up, which is expected, but you'll notice next to the satellite view button down in the lower left-hand corner, there's something that looks like Pac-Man. Well, what happens if you click that button is that Google will turn your city into a Pac-Man game. And you can play. It's pretty fun. I recommend it highly.
yeah, it's interesting how they handled some things with that. I played it in my area, and you have more than the 4 or the 2 typical off screens in Pac-Man. But so I had 3 or 4 streets going off the screen. You'd go off and you'd come on one and you'd try to go back the way you came and end up somewhere completely different. But it's definitely pretty cool that things like that are capable. of happening now. I had fun. A couple of sharp turns in my area I couldn't make, but and I wonder how fast Pac-Man is moving. If you calculate the speed he's going down the streets.
You trying to tell me you might be getting a speeding ticket?
Yeah, I'm curious. I mean, maybe it depends on how far you zoom out. But yeah, it was definitely a cool little trick. Wonder if they'll keep it around.
The one that was really more fascinating to me was if you go to Amazon.com right now, you look at this
Yeah.
website circa 1999, which is just fascinating to look at.
You're like, man, what is this? Was the web really like this back then?
Right, and it made me go back to archive.org and take a look at parallaxinfotech.com in the same period of time. So if you do that, it's actually pretty funny.
There's a
Because
picture.
we did have a website back then.
There's a picture of Steve there with a lot more hair.
No, I don't. John,
Down
that's
to
you with the hair problem.
down to his like shoulders.
But it is funny if you look back on the webarchive.org and take a look at our website. It looks like 2000 that they have it listed here, but that's what the website looked like. It's pretty comical. I'll paste this link in the show notes and I'll give it to you guys right now so you can have a laugh.
They actually had that. Amazon was like that for quite some time because I wasn't.
Yeah.
I mean, I wasn't using the internet. I didn't know about Amazon in 1999, but I certainly recognized the way that looked. So it's
Funny thing is, Amazon obviously started off just selling books, and then you look at this shot of their website, and there's all sorts of good stuff in the toolbar up there.
Yeah, that was so. If this is truly 1999, which it might not be, were they actually selling toys and games in 1999?
I think they might have been.
Or is this just their layout applied to today's content?
No, I think this is actually true to what the site looked like. I mean, they departed. They were departed from just books and went into music and videos and toys and games and stuff. I think 1999 seems like an accurate time frame for that. Because I know I probably started.
I don't agree with you, John. I think it's actually the 1990 design with today's content.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't know about that.
it's possible.
So let's move beyond April Fools, and we got probably 4 or 5 topics we just want to touch on today, and let's start with what we are all passionate about is Drupal 8. And I'm not sure I have a whole lot to say about Drupal 8 today. But I know Nick wanted to talk about the Accelerate program a little bit and the awards granted.
Yeah, so the Drupal 8 Accelerate program came out a little while back. I don't recall exactly when it was released. Late last year, I think. The idea behind it was getting some funding to provide grants, small grants to tackle specific issues. I think the initial goal was $125,000. I think they increased that to $250,000 recently, and they currently have $140,000 raised. I think the majority of that was a starter, like a seed from the Drupal Association. And I know AppNovation made the news in the last couple of weeks for donating $30,000 to the grant system as well. The grant system's up and running, in full swing, I think. I don't know how many people know about it, but there's about a dozen to 20 or so grants that have been granted. We'll put that in the show notes. And then some of them have already been executed, and you can see the report. So it's a pretty nice page. It shows what the title of the grant is, shows the amount of the grant, who's getting the grant, if they've already completed it or received some portion of it, they've completed a report, it looks like, and then it's also linked to specific issues that they're trying to solve. And it ranges everywhere from $500 to optimize route rebuilding, to to a $12,000 grant to Sprint for the Drupal CI project.
Do you know if there are guidelines as to what you can apply this grant towards? Because I'm looking in the list here. Most of it's code development, but we've got Drupal Camp sprints,
Yep.
which I'm not really clear on what that money would be going to, but are there guidelines?
Yeah, so they have a few guidelines. There's also another page, how do you say it? ASOC, ASSOC.drupal.org/D8 accelerate, and they talk about both the process, where you apply, what you can apply for, who grants them, what's funded, that kind of thing. So the type of grants they're looking for are grants for Drupal sprints to fix specific issues, or to fix a specific issue, by yourself, or to help fund a sprint. They're looking for creative ideas that will accelerate Drupal 8's release. So it's not necessarily something to get your pet project into Drupal 8 or smooth over a piece. It's really aimed towards items that will move Drupal 8 towards 1.0 or 8.0.0 release, so it can be public. There's obviously limited funds, so not everything's going to get funded, but it has to be somebody that generally has to be somebody that has a specific plan in place, and has some, the community knows about them. So it's not just some random person in Timbuktu, getting $10,000 to fix views caching when they don't know, anything about views or caching or Drupal.
Right.
So there's definitely some oversight. If you want an idea of what people are working on, I mean, there's a fairly comprehensive report. There was a Drupal 8 sprint at Drupal Camp, New Jersey, and it looks like Peter Wolanin was the grantee, and he wrote up quite a big summary about the things that they worked on, took a bunch of pictures, talked about the things that made the sprint successful. So there was a lot of planning that went into that sprint prior to getting the grant, determining what issues they wanted to work on specifically. As you said, there are some questions. What did that? They were granted $7,200. What did that money go towards? It's not entirely clear to me, but I believe what it is it was really about getting a couple of key people there. So it was getting flights, getting hotels, renting space, getting some food, that kind of stuff, so that people weren't funding a Drupal 8 sprint out of their own pocket. Because if you look at it, this sprint actually happened right around when Worcester, New England get that historic 3-foot snowstorm. So apparently there were some issues with people's flights getting in.
Right.
But it's definitely an interesting concept. It's something that some people in the community. I mean, it certainly raised concerns in my mind when I found out that people were they were needing to pay money to get Drupal 8 fixed. There's questions around why it's needed now and it wasn't needed in the past. There's concerns around whether it's signs of Drupal 8 being much further away from release than people think even now. But it's definitely a way to certainly putting money towards a problem and providing money to people that have dedicated countless hours of their life to helping Drupal.
So Nick, how much have you contributed to Drupal 8? You don't have to answer that, but how much would you contribute if someone was paying you to do it? Probably a significant amount more time. So there's great value in putting money, if it's available, to making things like Drupal 8 happen. I mean, you can't always expect everyone's time to just come for free.
Exactly, and it's an easy way to give back to the project as well. I mean, I've gained so much from the Drupal project. I haven't donated yet, but I'm seriously considering making up words today. I'm seriously considering that because Drupal has provided so much for me. I mean, it's the economy of my company. It's I've
What do
met
you mean by
great people.
donate? You haven't donated. What do you mean by that?
So you can the Drupal 8 fund is it's a fundraiser.
Okay, so you're not talking about the Drupal Association membership.
No, yeah,
Right, right,
actually I
right.
think my membership might have lapsed, so I need to look into that too,
Right.
because I really should be a member there as well. But it's a way, it's a way to get involved and get back to some of the other people that have been pretty helpful. And if you look at the names of the people that have been, getting the grants, they're certainly people that are really well known in the Drupal community. They maintain, some of the largest modules in the Drupal ecosystem. It looks like it's definitely performing its intended purpose.
Right. All right, let's move on to our next topic, which is interesting projects. So things that the three of us are working on that are interesting to us right now. And that could change 24 hours from now. So we're only looking for today. What is interesting that you're working on?
So I actually have I have a project that I'm working on right now that's actually pretty interesting. It's got a couple of different things that make it interesting for me. One is um, it's merging two existing websites. So there's an interesting consolidation of content
So
migration.
when you say two websites, Nick, do you mean like a company has two different websites
Yeah. So
and
a
they're
company
kind of
has,
pulling them together?
yeah. So I believe that there was an acquisition.
Okay.
They decided it was time to upgrade from Drupal 6. The website's having a fair amount of difficulty
Hmm.
um, due to traffic and performance issues. So it was time to upgrade anyway, and they decided to pull in their other property under the same hood. So there was an interesting consolidation in content, and then it was a chance to really dig into the migration modules, Drupal migrate and migrate and see kind of what we have to look forward to coming up in Drupal 8, since we'll be doing migrations only and there won't be any upgrades. Um, and it's come a long way since I last looked at it, and it's definitely been an interesting process, um, for sure.
So do you guys end up doing so are you migrating one site and then pulling content in from the second site like manually, or are you migrating two things into one?
A little bit of both.
Yeah.
We're migrating some stuff manually, and then there's a bunch of stuff that there's a bunch of stuff that doesn't have any historical value or archival value, so they're just gonna um, go through it manually and choose the pieces that are valuable, and there's not a huge
So
amount.
I would imagine one of the biggest parts of this outside of technology is the design and analysis of, what needs to be the final website after we look at these two.
Yep.
Like what stays, what goes, what's important, what's not.
Yeah, and making sure that they viewed all the
Yeah.
content that's relevant and determine that, so that they don't, 6 months from now go, oh yeah, we deleted these 25 pages that we really need.
Yeah. Was
um,
branding an issue with this?
uh, yes and no. I mean, they're actually no. I mean, they're really just getting rid of branding of the secondary site, and
Right.
it's being merged in.
Right.
Um,
The bigger company wins.
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Right.
the purchasing company wins, and
Yeah.
so it's also interesting. I mean, they have a couple of interesting use cases as well. They've got they deal with a fair amount of media,
Hmm.
and so they have a dedicated server for serving media, and it's
Hmm.
not a CDN, but it's just a dedicated server.
Right.
So being able to use a storage API module to set up a system so that it's actually, well, maybe that should be module of the week in a couple of weeks. It's got a function that you create a storage class and assign it to a file field,
Hmm.
and when somebody uploads a file, it will upload to the server, because it's much quicker to upload to the the HTTP server than some third-party server. And then when cron runs, it will look through any new files, move them to the third-party server, verify that they're there, and then delete the local file and update references to it.
Wow.
And it's pretty slick, and it didn't take too much configuration to get set up.
Is that connected to media module?
No, it's the storage API, so
okay.
it doesn't matter what's putting the content the file in or what's dealing with the file. It just all it does is create. So instead of just like public and private, public, private, in X, and you can connect X by FTP, by SSH, there's a good 5 or 6 different ways to connect it, and it works with Amazon, it works with whatever. So in this case, they just have an FTP connection, so it's dead simple to set up the FTP connection, and seems to work pretty flawlessly so far.
Wow, good. How about you, John? Interesting project?
Oh, as we talked about a couple of weeks ago, I'm working on some interesting e-commerce stuff right now. And I'm actually also working on a new module, doing some module development for a client of ours that does not have a Drupal module yet. So I'll be talking more about that in the next couple of weeks as the module is ready for some community review. But it's interesting. It's interesting to actually have a client come to you and say, "Hey, we need a Drupal module," and to be able to work with our internal team and build that.
Good. We'll look forward to hearing more about that. I assume that's the one you're working on is international commerce, right?
The one I'm working on?
The one you said you mentioned a couple of weeks ago?
Yes, yep.
Yeah,
it's commerce for India right now.
Right. Episode 91.
91.
Right.
Last week.
It was last week, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It seems like it was weeks ago, right?
Time flies when you're having fun.
All right. So an interesting project we're working on. We got a few of them, but the one I'm going to talk about is a marketing website. So working with a national nonprofit, and they're launching a marketing hashtag campaign where they're going to be promoting their services through a campaign that's social media based, and it's going to be hashtag based. So the website that we're building is going to be pulling in the social media posts that are from a hashtag. So if you post something on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook with a hashtag of ABC, we're pulling that into the marketing website. So those things are accumulated into one place. So we're working with an agency that accumulates the social media content. It's called OfferPop is the company, and we're pulling their content in from their API. So they're gathering the content. We're pulling it in from their API, loading it into our Drupal database, and then doing all kinds of cool stuff with it on our end. Things like allowing people to vote. This is a video-based campaign, so to vote, so users could vote the videos to make one over a period of time for voting. They could make one the highest voted video. They can make things their favorites and things like that. So it's really kind of interesting. So it's a combination of working with an outside third-party API, working with social media, and bringing all that into Drupal to what will hopefully be a very successful marketing campaign. And maybe it will go viral. We don't know. We'll see.
Sounds interesting.
Kind of interesting. Yeah, it's an interesting project. So let's move on to a topic that's all passionate to us. the Drupal camp that we've all been working on for the last 2 years, and we've mentioned it on the show many times. Nude Camp is what we've called it in the past, which is the New England Drupal camp. And we had a name change for the domain in the last 4 weeks. We changed the domain name from Nude Camp, which would be nedwdcamp.com, to nedcamp, nedcamp.org. I'm not sure if we mentioned this in the past, but the reason for this change is that we had some people in the Drupal community locally that were concerned about the acronym being called Nude Camp. So it's not spelled N-U-D-E as in naked people, but it's said that way. So we've had some pushback in the community saying, hey, this is maybe a little bit risque, maybe a little bit crossing the line. And as a committee, which Nick is on and John is on and a few other people, we had to sit back a few weeks ago and think about should we buckle, quote unquote, to pressure from the outside and change the name, or should we just change the name and not feel like we're buckling? So it was an interesting experience for us as a committee because we worked really hard for the first year to build what we thought was we knew up front that it was a name that would capture attention a little bit, but we never used the context of nude, like naked people, being anything related to the camp whatsoever in any of the graphics, in any of the language or anything. It was just the way you said it because we felt it was easy to remember. We thought it was easy to remember Nude Camp as an acronym, so that's why we came up with that name. And as it turns out, we found out over the past year that some community members were offended by that. And we reconvened as we started to plan for the second year and try to decide, was that a good thing for us to do, to change the name or not? And we came out on the side of, let's change the name. Just in retrospect, what do you guys think about what we did? I feel good about the name change and why we did it. I'm wondering what you guys think about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if the acronym, to be clear, the name has not changed. It is still the New England Drupal Camp, but the acronym and the web address has changed. I think if that was a barrier for anybody to come to the camp or to support the camp, then that's not a good thing. That's something that we needed to address, and we needed to change, and we did that. I think it goes to a wider issue in the tech community of treating everybody equally and respecting everybody, and I think that's something that's happening. I don't think I don't think this event or anybody on this team is guilty of that. But I think it's something we're all aware of, and that at least I know personally, I feel very strongly should not be happening. So for somebody, even one person, again, to feel like it made them uncomfortable, it made them not want to participate. I think it's definitely worth the conversation and worth the thought and the outcome.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. It's not. It was brought up in the first year briefly. It was brought up again in the second year, and when we were talking about it on the committee, it was a discussion of whether it was worth, defending. I mean, we had spoken about it in a blog post in the first year, and the real reason was it's easy to remember. It's evocative of New England Drupal Camp. There were a lot of other acronyms that we liked in the first year, but either the domains were taken or there were other camps, like there was an NE camp in Northeast England, and there were other contributing factors. And in the end of the day, in the first year, we just thought, we're not going to stoop down and make inappropriate, marketing materials. It's just the way it's pronounced sometimes, and it shouldn't be a big deal. But seeing that a couple people in the community had some issues, it's much easier just to change it, especially since we were able to find something that fit fairly well as well, rather than putting ourselves and future organizers in the position to feel that they always need to defend a name choice. And being in the second year, it's much easier to make a change now than in a year or 2 years or 3 years down the road.
I think what was interesting about that conversation, that one day that we really dug down to try to come up with a decision on this, is that I think we all came into the phone call. That was very long, by the way, but we all felt that, hey, we're going to dig down and defend this. And I think at the end of that call, I think we were mostly in the position of, you know what, maybe we should change this name. And it's not about defending it. It's about being sensitive to the community. And I really thought that was an interesting dynamic that day, is because I was in that camp too. I mean, I started that phone call that day thinking there's no way in hell we're changing this name. And I think halfway through that phone call, I was thinking to myself, you know what? There's no way in hell we're keeping this name. It was really sort of an interesting thing that happened in like a 90-minute phone call.
Yeah, I mean, it was, like you said, it was we spoke about it quite a bit. And the thing is, I think the reason why some of us went into that call, thinking that we should defend it, is that, we weren't excluding people, we weren't out to offend people, and we didn't, take the tacky route at any point. But I think what started to sway us was, it's not that people were necessarily accusing us of taking that tacky route or being offensive. It was more that it gave a couple people pause, and there's more important things to fight about. So it's better to just change the name and let the community's voice be heard. And I think that's one of the reasons also that we've started to bring on board a couple other people in an advisory capacity. I don't know if you want to talk about that a little bit more.
Yeah, I think so. One of the things that came out of this conversation, which was, we're a group of 4 or 5 people that are passionate about getting this camp created. We really want to build something that's awesome. But maybe the reality of that conversation was, you know what, we probably need some advice from people that are outside of us that meet on a regular basis, just to get maybe the pulse or input from outside forces. So we ended up creating an advisory committee for the New England Drupal Camp. They're in place. We're going to announce it probably in the next couple of days here. We've invited 5 to 7 people. I don't remember what the final number is here, that are spread out through the region in New England to just sort of keep an eye on and give some advice as we make decisions moving forward. Because we do want this conference to be long-lasting and to grow every year, and not to be maybe jaded by the inner circle that we have. So we've created that committee. So everyone invited accepted. So we're looking to get the input moving forward. So to net this out, I think this was a great experience for us as organizers, and I think we're moving in the right direction.
Yep.
Yeah, definitely. And not to belabor the point or to harp on the injustices in the industry, but I think our keynote speaker was also picked not only because she's heavily involved in the Drupal community, but I came to the table this year really looking for some influential women in tech to be able to kind of say that there are women out there that are very influential, and they should be celebrated, and they should definitely be given as much credit, if not more credit, than the male counterparts. So I think it's something that's really important to be aware of, and I think it's something that personally I try to strive for is equality.
Yeah, so if you want to hear Holly Ross, the executive director of Drupal Association, she's given our keynote this year. I don't know if we mentioned that.
I don't think I did. I appreciate the help there.
And by the way, Holly Ross was invited before the name change was done.
That is true.
It was sort of unrelated, but I guess a great coincidence. So let's move off of the name change. It sounds like a downing conversation, by the way.
We're gonna bring it. We're gonna bring it up. We're gonna bring
really?
it up right here.
Okay, let's go. DrupalCon is gonna bring it up. So
DrupalCon.
Some just tidbits for you people who are planning on going to DrupalCon.
Yeah, so I will be going to DrupalCon. I bought my ticket. Early bird pricing actually ended on Friday. I don't think they've said that they're going to extend it. So your ticket is now a little bit more expensive, but still very reasonable compared to other conference tickets. I believe it's now $650. Just checking on that right now. I'm sorry, it's $550. Which again is a good price for if you've gone to a tech conference before. There are some tech conferences out there that charge almost double or triple that to attend. So DrupalCon's a good value. Also, get your tickets now. Get your hotel, get your airfare, because it seems to me that airfare prices were going up and hotels were filling up. So
John, you had some trouble with your hotel, right?
Yeah, I was only able to book the hotel I wanted to stay at. I'll be arriving on Monday and leaving on Friday, but I was only able to book the hotel until Thursday. So I have a call.
So if anyone has a cot or a bed that John could sleep in on Thursday night, just if you could reach out to us and let us know.
I have a call to the coordinator for that from the Drupal Association. So hopefully we'll get that worked out. Worst case scenario, I have to switch hotels. Not really a big deal. We're going to get that figured out. So definitely jump on that as quickly as possible.
Great. Let's move on to our last topic. I think it might be the last topic. So we often love to debate about tech stuff when we're not recording, which is very funny. So the best part of this show is often before we hit record and after we hit record, and we apologize for that. So we try to bring as much of that as we can into the show, but so let's talk about a few tech topics. And there's one that's just smacking us in the face, which is the Apple Watch.
Yeah.
And I think the last OTC we talked about this. It seems that we've talked about like wearable technology in the past.
Yep.
Yeah, it was wearable technology in the past, but the Apple Watch is here. It's like intro price is $350, and then goes all the way up to $10,000. And the only difference between all of those pricing tiers is the materials that the watch is built on, and there's no functional differences that I'm aware of between any of those price points. So it's just about the materials.
So there's really a price point of $10,000 for an Apple Watch?
Yeah, it's gold.
It's made out of gold. So what Apple's doing here is trying to position itself as a fashion accessory company. I don't know if anybody's aware of this, but a while back they actually pulled in an executive from Burberry. When I say pulled in, I mean made her a better offer than she was currently getting. So she's actually working with Apple now, and if nobody knows what Burberry is, they're basically a high-end British, I believe, clothing manufacturer. So she's working for Apple, and they're basically trying to position themselves as a fashion accessory company, which is interesting for Apple. You know, if that's the next big thing for them, that's a kind of a huge shift. There are a lot of companies out there that have been merging technology and fashion. So I don't know. I don't know if it's a huge shift for them or if it's a step in the right direction. I think we're going to have to wait and see how that pans out. But the Apple Watch itself is an interesting phenomenon for me, and you know I'm a watch lover, and I have some reservations about going out and purchasing an Apple Watch.
So, John, let's talk about for a minute about when you say you're a watch lover, because I don't know any watch lovers other than you.
Oh, wow.
What does it mean to be a watch lover to you? It's about fashion, or is it about practicality, or usability, or what is it?
I think it can, you know, it can range in a couple of different areas. I think, you know, there are a lot of different types of watch lovers out there. But for me, it's a couple of things. It's quality, it's, you know, practicality, and it's also a little bit of style.
Is it not more about, like, so in today's world for practicality? So you carry your phone with you 24/7, right? It's always with you. I know that.
Yep.
So you can get your time just as easily and probably see it more often on your phone than you do on your watch. So is it not more about fashion?
So here's the thing for me. All of the things, it is true. All of the things that my watch does, you know,
Which is what? It's tell time. The
It's-
watch you have just tells time, doesn't it?
no, it's actually a chronograph. So it tells time. It has the date on it. It has timer functionality.
Okay.
So I can, you know, stopwatch functionality, that sort of thing.
Is
So
it digital or analog?
no, it's analog.
Okay.
It's also self-winding, so it never needs a battery. And you know, obviously, that's, you know, my phone does all of that stuff, minus being self-winding. Definitely has a power need there, but the thing for me is it's a lot easier, and this is kind of what Apple has said. It's a lot easier to look down at your wrist, glance at your wrist, and say, "Oh, it's 2 o'clock on April 1st. Okay, great." Than to go digging in your pocket for your phone, have to pull it out, have to turn it on to look at the lock screen. You know, if you're, you know, any situation you're in, most of the time your phone is not as readily accessible as a wristwatch might be.
Hmm.
I think that, I mean, I'm not the world's best judge on fashion, but if they're trying to move into fat, and I'm not the, you know, the best, you
Nick,
know.
we never noticed that, by the way. And I also wanted to bring up earlier that your goatee is gone. That lasted like, what, 2 weeks?
Yeah,
It's still there. You just can't see it.
yeah. No, I felt like shaving. Um,
Okay.
I'm not a fan of how these watches look, especially the sports in the watch edition. Wait, Apple. So there's watch sport, and watch edition. The sport and watch edition look. I would never wear those ever.
Yeah, but
And
you're not a fashion guy, right?
no, I'm not a fashion guy, but I mean, I am.
But you are a tech geek.
Yeah.
So let's take the opposite approach. The opposite question here is the practicality or the usefulness of having some technology on your wrist.
So I've been very tempted to get an Android watch or, you know, Samsung's watch. Um, there's a couple things that have prevented me from it. One is I don't know what it would do different for my phone. Like Google Glass, I can see some different utility there than having a phone. I mean, just having the ability to take pictures whenever you want. You know, I mean, there's more utility there. A little bit outside my price point for tech gadgets. A watch, though, I don't see what it has. And you know, to be honest, I tend to be a bit clumsy with my watches. One of the reasons why I don't wear them, I always bang them against door handles or
I'll say,
whatever,
Nick,
and destroy them.
honestly, I'm with you on that. One of the reasons, I bought the watch that I bought is because of the durability. My ability to be able to basically run a car over it and have it not continue to work was a must, because I'm right there with you. Banging it against stuff, knocking it around, wearing it in the shower is another big concern for the Apple Watch. I never take my watch off because it's waterproof up to whatever 50 meters or 200 meters, whatever it is. Is the Apple Watch going to be waterproof? Probably not. Like that.
I think it is.
Really? That's interesting.
Well, it should be, because I have the Google Watch, and it is. I wear it in the shower almost every day. Yep.
It'll be interesting to see if that's the case. I would hope that it would be.
Yeah.
Water resistant. I also wear my watch swimming, which is another concern for me. I wear my watch 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for the most part, and
So John, wouldn't it be more useful if that thing you're wearing on your wrist, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, had more information to you that could be readily available other than a stopwatch, the time of day, and the date?
Yes, absolutely, and that's one of the reasons why the Apple Watch is appealing to me. Like, the concept of it is very interesting. I just have reservations, and my biggest reservation is with most Apple products. What's the release time frame on this thing? Are they going to release this Apple Watch, in the middle of this year, and then a year from now, 2 years from now, release another Apple Watch? And
I guess we could probably expect, right? The pattern of the iPhone would be every 2 years is an upgrade, which doesn't mean that your current watch is no good, right? But you might be at the lower end of the watch spectrum.
I mean,
so maybe go every 3 or 4 years that you would need to replace it.
Or maybe it's like, if they're really going for the accessory, then you own 10 of them, and you choose the color and band based on your outfit.
Listen, I love watches, and I'm looking at them right now, and I would probably get the regular old the Apple Watch, not the Sport or the Edition, because the Edition's the more pricey one. And I believe that one's coming in somewhere between $600 and $800. I think it's like $750 maybe, depending on what bracelet you get, because I think they're also charging for the bracelet. But I think that's kind of crazy to me to have to spend $750 on a watch every 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, whatever it is. I mean, I've had the watch that's on my wrist right now for at least 10 years, and it works perfectly fine, keeps the time, tells me the date, winds itself, does the stopwatch
But
stuff.
John, does it tell you how many steps you walked today?
No, but my iPhone does.
Okay.
And my iPhone will tell me if I've gotten a text message, and my iPhone will tell me if my phone is ringing.
So I think the piece we're missing here is, what is the practicality of having this communication on your wrist?
Well, I think it's that, but I also think it's what's Apple's plan for upgrading? What's Apple's plan for how do they justify the cost?
But John, it doesn't matter though.
Yeah,
if it's awesome, it doesn't matter, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say
I
that.
think they've proven that.
Have you upgraded your watch? I mean, your watch does 3 things.
But there's nothing to upgrade it to.
Yeah, you're not upgrading. You're not going to upgrade your watch in 3 years, are you? It's the same thing with the Apple.
Only because a newer watch won't do anything for John. John's same watch, if he bought it today, would do exactly what it's doing today that it did 10 years ago.
Exactly, and the question is what.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why I'd probably rather get an Android watch anyway, because then you can root it and you can do whatever you want with it, most likely. Apple.
So I've been using. I bought the Google Watch. I got a good deal on it. I think I paid $115 or $120 for the Google Watch probably 9 months ago, and I wear it almost every day. But I have to be honest. The practicality of it, and this is why I don't think the Apple Watch is going to do that well, to be honest with you. I think people will buy it because they're Apple people, but I don't think it brings much more value to your life, to be honest. I mean, it is more of a distraction than anything else. I see that it's handy, so if I get a text message, like my watch works in a way that if my watch is on, it's on my wrist, my phone doesn't beep or doesn't make any noises, and when a notification comes in, I can look at my wrist. But that's not that much different than looking at my phone. And to be honest, in a social environment, it's much more distracting. So I think we talked about this previously, but
I think it's going to become less
there's a social cue. There's a social cue when you're with people, when they pick up their wrist and look at it. What does that mean to you?
It means, like, is this conversation over? Can I stop talking to this person? Can I get out of here? And I think that social cue is actually going to change with the advent of these Apple Watches or these smart watches. Because I do agree that, you know, a lot of times people will look at their wrist and it is a social cue of, like, you know, I'm bored, I need to get out of here, or I want to go. But I think that's going to change. I see the value in it. There are often times where you know, my phone will ring in my pocket, or I'll get a text message in my pocket, and I won't even know. It just happened to me the other day. I was at the store. My wife sent me a text message. Can you pick something up? And I got home. She's like, "Hey, did you get my text message? You know, about picking that thing up?" And I said, "No, sure didn't." You know, if I were wearing an Apple Watch, it would you know, basically tap me on the wrist and say, "Hey, you got a text message from your wife. It says pick up this."
You know, John, my experience though, because I'm using one, is that I think you ignore those as much as you ignore your phone.
But Steve, you're not wearing an Apple Watch. It's going to change.
That's true. That's a good point, John.
It's going to change your whole life.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. And I got to tell you this story. There's, like, in 9 months is one time that the Google Watch was so convenient for me. And it was about a month ago. I was out snow blowing my driveway, because I did get a snowblower, by the way. So I was snow blowing my driveway, and I had my watch on, and I got a text message from Nick, by the way, who asked me a question about a project. And I picked up my wrist, and I talked into it to answer it, because I had gloves on, my phone was in my pocket, and I couldn't answer it, and I replied to his text message.
Okay.
That is... You probably don't know that, Nick, but...
No, you mentioned it after, but I didn't realize you were talking at it.
I talked to my wrist and responded to the text message, which was the most useful time that I had ever used it ever in 9 months.
Did it justify the...
Yeah.
Well, what about charging? I mean, do you have to charge it every night?
Yeah, you have to charge it every night because it lasts about... mine lasts about maybe 14, 16 hours, which is fine. I mean... I stick it on. I don't have it on now, but I charge it at night and I put it on in the morning. That's
the other issue I have with, you know, the whole smartwatch thing. I think I'm very torn because I think it's a great idea, and it's a great you know, essentially Bluetooth device for your phone that you wear on your person. But the whole charging thing, again, you know, never take my watch off. My watch always keeps time. And, you know, I don't have to charge it. I don't have to worry about it. It just makes, you know, it's easy, as opposed to where the watch is another thing that I got to put on in the morning or take off at night, or, you know, worry about, oh, hey, I got in the car, I'm halfway to work, I forgot my watch. Great. Now, you know, my whole day is kind of off kilter because I forgot this thing that's usually always there.
You know, the interesting thing to me about this release from Apple, because it's their next big thing, right? We had if you look over the past 10 years, maybe not quite that far, but we had the iPod, the iPhone, the iPod, the iPhone, the iPad, each one of those devices were revolutionary in what they were delivering. This iWatch is not. This is not a game changer in any way like those other devices were. And it will be interesting to see what happens here.
I don't know. I don't know if I can say you can say that though. I mean, I feel like it's a game changer in the wearables industry.
No way. No, it's not.
No. So I do want
It's not a
to
game
point out.
changer.
I want to point out. I agree with you, Stephen. I want to point out one thing. We have to go back 15 years. iPod came out in 2001. Times.
That would be 14 years if it's 2001.
What came out then?
iPod came out October 23rd, 2001.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, the iPod. Yeah.
And the thing is, their pattern has been taking something that somebody else has done and just do it a bit flashier and a bit easier user experience. The iPod, there were MP3 players. The iPhone, there were a couple of smartphones.
Yeah, but no. There were no. You can say that for the iPod. You can't say that for the iPhone.
Yeah. I'll concede that.
Yeah. Nor the iPad.
But I agree with your point on the watch. People have already been doing that,
but they haven't done it. They haven't done it in this way. What's Apple changing here? Apple's managing to make a watch that isn't just like this black box that you put on your wrist. Anybody that's wearing a smartwatch right now, if you look at it from a fashion standpoint, you're basically just wearing a black band on your wrist with a big face on it. You're not really getting the style benefits that you're going to get here. And I think that's really, from a tech standpoint, yeah, sure, there are plenty of devices that'll read you your text messages and tell you got a phone call. But from a fashion standpoint, which is where I think Apple's trying to go with this, you're getting something that's pretty customizable from what I'm seeing from these photos, and that looks a lot better than most of the smartwatches on the market.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'd agree with that. Number one, number two, Apple isn't a fashion company, and just bringing in one person isn't going to make them a fashion company. I mean, they're.
Nick.
I don't know. Johnny Ives makes them an industrial design company, and.
Yeah, the iPod was a fashion device to some, like a tech fashion. The first Apple computer was very different than anything. Everything had been like these gray boxes before then. I mean, yes.
I mean, Apple's whole platform is form and function, not just one or the other. So I don't think. I don't think one person can make that a company standard, but I think it's been a company standard, and hiring somebody from Burberry, who's a clothing manufacturer, an industry completely different from what Apple does, they're not hiring her to make them a fashion company. They're hiring her so that they can market this as a fashion device as opposed to a piece of technology.
I guess the issue I see, John, is that the fashion can be replicated, but the technology is the piece that's always made Apple different, and I don't see it here.
Yeah,
I don't think they're leading it. I think they're way behind it, and I'll be shocked, and I hope I'm wrong. I'll be shocked in 2 years if this is a leading product for them.
Here's the thing. I think that I don't disagree with that. I think there are plenty of other smartwatches out there, and I don't think the look alone is enough to say, oh wow, this is so revolutionary. But I do think that the integration point with your iPhone is going to be something that kind of sets this product apart. And I also think that once people start using this, we're going to see a lot more of it, because right now all we're getting really is basically media's perception of the Apple Watch, and media, people that have played with it for 15 minutes in a demo, right?
No, but John, I think you're wrong there. I think there's lots of smartwatches that are out there that people have been using for years now. and Apple hasn't delivered anything significantly different. The apps might be a little bit better or look a little nicer, but the general functionality here is the same.
Yeah, and smartwatches integrate with your phone already. It's not revolutionary to integrate with the
Yeah,
iPhone.
there's nothing going on here that's revolutionary.
Yeah, I honestly think that it's a kind of a wait and see game because, like I said, the media has given us, their 15-minute review of the Apple Watch. I think we'll have to see what road Apple goes down with this thing. Maybe maybe it is just another smartwatch that you wear on your wrist and it connects to your phone and shows you your text messages, or maybe there's certain apps or certain functionality in there that makes it different from those other other smartwatches. I don't really know.
I think it's Apple conceding that they need to be in this space, and that's all it is. They need to be there.
But
like you need to have a USB port.
Let's be realistic, though. They took the same approach with the iPhone.
No, not true. I mean, they were revolutionary.
Not true. I mean, they weren't the first manufacturer.
You're kidding.
You're
kidding me, right?
They weren't the first manufacturer of a smartphone.
John, they revolutionized. They changed. The iPhone changed the computing industry completely.
Right, but would you agree that they weren't the first manufacturer of a quote-unquote smartphone?
But that's not the point.
Sure it is. You're telling me that there are a million other smartwatches out there. Apple's not the first person to come out with a smartwatch. They have to they revolutionize it. You didn't realize.
Okay. So I can't wait to see this revolutionized product.
But that's my point exactly. Is that they revolutionized the iPhone after everybody started using it and going like, this thing
John,
is amazing.
what was the first smartphone before the iPhone? Can you tell me what it was?
Oh, I cannot. I would have to look that up.
BlackBerry.
Yeah, it was some sort of BlackBerry or Android device.
Sorry, guys. You did not have pinch and zoom. You didn't have the functionality that the iPhone had. That's just not even. Am I on another planet right now? You're going to say that the iPhone was not revolutionary?
I did not say that. I did not say that at all.
In his defense, he didn't say that.
I didn't say it wasn't. I agree with you 100%. Nobody realized it was revolutionary until they started using it.
No, John. Everyone was waiting for a year because there were rumors about this because it was going to be revolutionary, and it was the biggest thing to hit the tech industry in the past 25 years. That's how big it was.
I mean, I think the watch could be successful, but not because it's revolutionary. And I mean, if you look at Apple's latest releases, they haven't done anything revolutionary in a while. I mean, their iPad 2 didn't, take off. Their latest Mac Air release, I mean, they took away even more features and just made it, half a millimeter thinner or something like that. They're
incremental changes, yeah.
Yeah, they've been small. So they're trying to separate a new space. And the thing is, in the last 15 years, the 3 times they stepped into a new space, it was revolutionary, whether or not they were the first. And they weren't the first for either of them. They weren't the first smartphone, they weren't the first iPod, they weren't the first MP3 player, and they weren't the first tablet, but they were the first revolutionary ones, the ones that changed the way people thought about them and designed for them and used them. And that's not the case for the watch. The watch, the only thing that's different is you have a lot more styles to choose from, and it's made by Apple. And the fact that it's made by Apple is a draw for a lot of people. I'm not gonna. There's people that every 2 years, every time there's an update on the iPhone, they go out and spend $600 to get a new one, just because it's Apple and they have a phone that works perfectly well. And I mean, the only Apple device I own is the Apple TV. I probably won't own another one because I'm not a fan of the closed mentality. Their ideas that devices need to be fashion accessories in the first place. But that doesn't. I don't, and it's not. I don't think it can revolutionize the space because there's nothing revolutionary about strapping your phone to your wrist.
So I think we've come to it was funny because when we were working on the agenda for today, was like, should we talk about tech topics or not? and we started to talk about it off the show, and it got very juicy. And I'm glad that we carried this passion on to the show as well. And time will tell. John, have you placed your order for your Apple Watch?
Wow, what a pun intended there. I have not. The jury's still out.
What are you waiting for?
The jury's still out for me on the Apple Watch, and whether it makes sense. I don't want to fall into that Apple upgrade policy where every 2 years I got to go buy a new watch because I want the new latest and greatest feature.
But you're not buying a watch. You're buying a communication device. But anyway.
But now I got to buy every 2 years. I got to buy an iPhone for $700, and now I got to buy a watch for $700.
See, that's the
next
problem.
I might as well just give Apple my whole paycheck. Like here, Apple, just take it.
That statement right there. I have to every 2 years. That's my major problem with Apple. The fact that people that use their devices feel.
Yeah, but you know what, guys? That's not fair. It's not fair it's not fair to talk about a phone and say Apple every 2 years, because any phone today really
lasts a couple of years.
Yeah, the pace that you have to use it is a couple of years. So don't pin that on Apple.
I'm not pinning. That is fair, Steve, because I'm not pinning the upgrade cycle on Apple. Right. I mean, it is kind of their fault. They did set a model for like every 2 years releasing a new phone, and the industry was like, "Oh, we better keep up." But the price points are what is really the going factor. And I've never really looked at a different phone, but from what I understand, the Samsungs and the HTC phones that are out there are probably cheaper than the iPhone. So, I think it's tough. It's tough sell.
Samsung's about the same price now. I mean, the new Galaxy S6 is $750. They're on par. And the thing is, to be fair, they don't, or maybe I'm just oblivious to it, but they don't push that upgrade for everything. Like, I've had my Apple TV for 4 years, and I have noticed. I mean, there's been other models that have come out, and there's no reason for me to get another model because mine works. The only reason why I'll probably need to do something like that is the remote. Their peripherals are awful. The remote is terrible, and it's starting to show its age. And I don't know if there's a way to just replace.
Yeah, but you could expect that after 4 years. Right?
Yeah. I mean, it's not. Well, I mean, I've had TV remotes for more than 4 years, but but it's definitely. I'm
impressed that you could still find it after 4 years. By the way.
What?
The size of that remote.
Yeah, it's like Bose, the Bose remote. You can't turn your radio on unless you have the remote, and they make the remote this big.
Yeah, exactly. We're always looking for the Apple remote.
I think that's why it's broken. Like I'll be, all of a sudden disappears. So I have to like shake the covers to find it. And it goes flying across the room and smashes against the wall.
Hey, before we go to the module of the week, I want to bring up one more thing. So I'm currently listening on Audible. This is not an Audible commercial, by the way. This is not Twit. Listening to Becoming Steve Jobs. Has anyone heard of that new book that just came out 2 weeks ago?
Yes.
Yeah, so I'm listening to it on Audible, and it's something struck me a couple of days ago, is that they were talking about it's a history of Steve, Steve's legacy. It seems very much like the original book that came out right after he passed in 2011, I think it was. It's already been 4 years since he died, right? Is it 2011? Am I right?
I think so. I don't know positively.
But interesting thing is that they're talking about the price of the first Apple computer that came out, the Apple One, I think they call it. It was like $1,250. So that's like the price today. I mean, Apple has kept, I think, the standard price for getting a really good Apple computer the same since 1979, right? You can get a great Apple computer today for $1,200.
Really?
Yeah,
which
absolutely.
one? I mean, everyone.
I don't want
every
this to
time
go.
I look
I don't
at-
want this to
yeah,
go in that direction.
every time I look at buying a computer for Apple, it's
You can get an iMac for around that,
You
right?
get an iMac for that. You can get a MacBook Pro for that. You can get a you can get a MacBook Pro for that, and you can get the Air for that as well.
I wouldn't call the Air a very good computer though.
Okay, yeah, that's where I did not want to go with that conversation. But I guess my point was the prices haven't changed, and let's move on. All right. So our module of the week.
Yeah, so this week it's a little bit different. It's not
It's not a module.
not technically a module. Yeah, it's not a module. But I thought it'd be interesting to talk a little bit about entity field query, because that's become an essential part to all the little helper modules and glue modules that I create on projects. For those that don't know, entity field query is a way to this isn't a perfect example or perfect analogy, but it's a way to build views in code, basically. It's an API that allows you to, for example, grab all nodes that are published of a certain content type very easily, and then you can build whatever you need to after that. So you can build a loop that goes through each and validates something, or displays them, or sends them in an email to someone else. So it's become an essential part in my repertoire. It's been and it's fairly straightforward to learn. Very useful.
So Nick, how about some resources? Can you put them in the show notes here?
Yeah, I can do that. There's fairly good documentation on the API that talks about it, and then there's a lot of comments where people talk about specifics when trying to query certain things. I think the biggest drawback is there's no real way to do ORs. So you can't say, for example, I want nodes that have a value of this or that. You end up having to chain them together, or do other tricks, or do a query alter. There's no way to do ORs. But that hasn't really limited
the way to do an OR is to do multiple queries
and join them.
Yeah.
But it's pretty straightforward. There's a lot of documentation out there, which is helpful. So I'll put a link in the show notes. And that's that.
All right, great. Anything else? Oh, John disappeared. Okay, so I guess we'll just say goodbye to him. Hey, Nick, where can people find you online?
You can find me at Nixvan, Nicxvan, pretty much everywhere online.
Anything else you want to tell us about?
I think we've got 2 weeks from now is the Providence Drupal meetup, and I think next week is the Boston Drupal meetup.
Right.
Both are very, very good. If you're in the area, try to make it out. Both on Tuesday nights.
Yeah, great. How about you, John?
I'm sorry. What was the question?
Where can we find you?
What is your annual salary?
We're at that point. We're at that point of the show. You can find me. I think Nick just mentioned the Providence Drupal meetup. So you can find me there in 2 weeks on the 14th of April at the OOMF offices. They're lovely. Come on by. And you can find me.
Are you going to have a tax professional there that night?
Tax professional.
That's the April 14th, right?
Yeah. Is that
April
tax
15th.
day?
April 15th.
The next day is April 15th. So.
Oh.
Sorry.
No, we won't have
a little American joke there.
We won't have a tax professional, but if you want tax advice that you can't really use, come on by. I'll be more than happy to help you out with that. Also, if you want more rantings of mine, you can find me at John Picozzi on all the major social networks and always on at doomthink.com.
Great. Thank you guys for your time again this week. I'm Stephen Cross at Stephen Cross on Twitter with a PH or parallaxinfotech.com. And I guess we'll chat a week from today.
See you next week.
See you guys.
Have a good one.
Take care.